The siege of Mariupol, the southern Ukrainian city hit by the heaviest bombardment by Russian forces since the invasion began.
I'm Bing Wong reporting for TaiwanPlus, and I'm here at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs where donations are being collected to relieve the crisis in Ukraine.
Taiwan's salaries are rising, but do the numbers really add up?
I'm Andrew Ryan, and today I am in the central city of Taichung to find out why Expedia and Booking.com have listed this city as one of the hottest travel destinations of 2022.
A warm welcome to Taiwan Plus News. I'm Betty Chen. Ukraine's foreign minister has described the siege of the southern Ukrainian city of Mariupol as the most tragic of Russia's invasion. The port city of more than 400,000 is under heavy bombardment by Russian forces, with reports of residential buildings and fire stations being shelled. But as James Chater reports, Russian officials still deny their invasion of Ukraine is an attack.
In the Ukrainian city of Mariupol, echoes of Russian shelling reverberate for another day through deserted streets. For those still in the city, an increasingly dire situation. Encircling Russian forces have left them without heat or electricity. Food and water are also running low.
Не стало его, расстреляли, попала туда.
The strategic port city of Mariupol is enduring some of the most intense bombardment by Russian forces, who are attacking from every direction. At a tense meeting in Turkey with his Russian counterpart, Ukraine's foreign minister said the situation in Mariupol was now the most tragic of the conflict, and called on Russia to allow a humanitarian corridor to be set up. Previous attempts to arrange humanitarian corridors have been unsuccessful.
We also raised the issue of a ceasefire, 24-hour ceasefire, to resolve the most pressing humanitarian issues. We did not make progress on this since it seems that there are other decision makers for this matter in Russia.
The meeting comes as criticism mounts on Russia for a Wednesday attack on a children's hospital in the city. Ukrainian officials now say 3 people died in the strike, including a child. But despite glaring evidence to the contrary, Moscow maintains their actions in Ukraine do not constitute an invasion.
Ну и что касается вашего вопроса о том, планируем ли мы нападать на другие страны мы нападать не планируем. Мы на Украину не нападали. На Украине мы просто объяснили многократно. Наступила ситуация, которая создает прямые угрозы безопасности Российской Федерации.
Ukrainian officials estimate Russian shelling has already caused some $100 billion of damage. But for those in Mariupol now without homes, the human cost of this devastation is all too clear. Karma Su and James Chater for TaiwanPlus.
President Tsai Ing-wen has said Taiwan stands alongside the rest of the world in supporting Ukraine against Russia's invasion. She made the remarks on Thursday at an annual banquet held by the Foreign Ministry for diplomats stationed in Taipei. In her speech, Tsai highlighted the ways in which the Taiwanese people had come together to help Ukraine over the past 2 weeks.
近来乌克兰战火延烧，台湾已经启动了对乌克兰的人道救援。台湾人民赈济乌克兰的捐款，在短短几天就超过5亿元。身处民主最前线的台湾人民，会跟所有热爱民主自由的人们站在一起。
Images of Ukrainians trying to escape the violence in their country have struck a chord with people in Taiwan. So 2.4 million people have evacuated Ukraine, with many more trying to flee. And half a world away in Taiwan, citizens are doing their part to show their support with donations to help the refugees. Bing Wang reports.
As the Russian invasion enters its 3rd week, Boxes on top of boxes are being delivered to this garage in the building that houses Taiwan's foreign ministry. Inside are supplies such as face masks, warm clothing, diapers, and even wheelchairs. All of this is being sent to the victims of the crisis in Ukraine. The drive began on March 5th, and in less than 1 week, thousands of people have come to donate items to help those escaping the violence. It's part of a nationwide effort to provide humanitarian aid to refugees. Many now have crossed the border into neighboring countries. Since the start of the Russian invasion, Taiwan has donated more than $18 million to the Eastern European country. Now people are asking if they can help in other ways.
因为外交部从3月2日成立专户，就是接受民众捐款之后呢，就不断的有民众跟企业打来问说，那如果想要捐物资的话该怎么办？所以外交部就决定就是发起这个活动，就是接受民众捐物资，然后把大家的爱心呢聚集起来，一起送到乌克兰难民的手上。
The conflict in Ukraine has struck a chord with people in Taiwan, which has an aggressive neighbor of its own. Just 180 kilometers away lies China, which claims Taiwan as part of its own territory and has not ruled out taking the country by force. And that's despite the fact that the PRC has never ruled Taiwan. The crisis in Ukraine has resonated with many Taiwanese people. Now, this is just the start of the funding and donation drive, but officials have told me that the response has been overwhelming. They say that donations have been coming in every minute from people in all walks of life.
I think Taiwanese are willing to help. Like we say, we can help and we are willing to help. And I think there's lots of people, they are willing to share not only their money but also their supplement. So I think that's how Taiwanese shows our capability and also our ability to help the international society.
In the last decade, Taiwan has stepped up to help other countries in the region ravaged by natural disasters, like the tsunami in Japan and typhoons in the Philippines. But now a war thousands of kilometers away in Ukraine is prompting Taiwanese to come out in droves, a sign that despite the distance, for many it feels a little bit too close to home. James Raynor, Ken Ning, and Bing Wong for TaiwanPlus.
The Pentagon's top official for Indo-Pacific Affairs in a House committee hearing said that Washington's response to Chinese aggression would be different from that seen in Ukraine. This comes as Taiwan introduces more rigorous combat training for its reservists, all part of an effort to step up its self-defense capabilities. Jaime Okan reports.
Taiwan is stepping up its combat readiness. These reservists are in the middle of an intensified training regimen aimed at enhancing their skills, particularly with handling weapons. In recent months, Beijing has stepped up incursions into Taiwan, with more than 220 military aircraft entering Taiwan's air defense zone so far this year. The invasion of Ukraine has given Taiwan's security preparations a new sense of urgency, along with China's amplified claims that Taiwan is part of its country.
For Taiwanese young people and also the people in Taiwan, we also need to prepare ourselves too. So far, we can see the government in Taiwan has strengthened the training for military reserves. Okay, like I told my students all the time, you need to have regular training, physical training to maintain good health, and also you need to receive some necessary military knowledge, training, and also you need to seriously consider how to prepare yourself for the future potential attacks.
As countries like Taiwan and the U.S. watch the Russian invasion of Ukraine unfold, there are fears that a similar situation could happen in this region, as China maintains its pressure on Taiwan. Comparisons of Ukraine and Taiwan featured in a U.S. House committee hearing on military activities in the Indo-Pacific highlight an urgency to prepare for the worst.
When I look at the conflict in Ukraine, the lessons that I draw, number one, are the importance of Taiwan developing its own capabilities And that's something, and its own defenses and deterrence, and that's something we're working with them on.
Some officials are looking at the war in Ukraine and fear similar events could unravel in Taiwan.
Right, this is a real wake-up. There was some surprise over in Europe. I think that, number one, we have to look at this and say, hey, this could happen. And I have a sense of urgency to execute the missions the Secretary has assigned, which is to prevent this conflict.
While in Washington, the debate over comparisons between Taiwan and Ukraine remains heated.
Is the defense of Taiwan different than what we're doing for Ukraine?
Yes, Mr. Congressman, I think it would be different.
Okay.
In Taiwan, many understand that ultimately their security remains in their own hands. Rick E. and Jaime Ocon for TaiwanPlus.
The annual meeting of China's rubber stamp parliament, the National People's Congress, wrapped up on Friday. This year's meeting, which set out Chinese government policies for the year ahead, is a precursor to the 20th Chinese Communist Party Congress in November, where President Xi Jinping is widely expected to secure a third term as party chief. Chinese presidents were previously limited to 2 terms in office, but these limits were removed 4 years ago, paving the way for Xi to continue ruling indefinitely. During the National People's Congress, analysts said Chinese Premier Li Keqiang mentioned the word stability multiple times. To discuss the significance of that theme and other implications for Taiwan, our reporter in Kavat spoke with Zheng Weifeng from the Graduate Institute of China Studies at Tamkang University in Taiwan.
So I think the major work they are doing this year is to maintain stability. So this is also can be applied to the situation between China and Taiwan. They want the international environment to be stable.
There are terms that the Premier used, which you have highlighted. Could you take us through what these terms mean and whether they provide clues to Taiwan?
So the English is, I remember, is firmly opposed foreign interference. So it's just like 2 words, foreign interference. So they didn't specifically mention what is the force, but we know that the force is the United States. And they used this term last year in last year's government report when they talked about Hong Kong. So they also have this mindset that you have to oppose foreign interference in Hong Kong affairs. But this year, they just use it in terms of the Taiwan issue. So they also want to use the form of one country, 2 systems in Hong Kong, in Taiwan. They want to apply these the same ideas in Taiwan. But the situation is that they cannot actually do that in Taiwan. For Taiwan, maybe in the future they will think about having a regulation or having a law to specify the schedule of unification, but not like Hong Kong. They cannot directly saying that, okay, the government should do this, should do that. Maybe they are thinking about these measures against Taiwan independence, but what they will do, I think now remains unclear.
The Taiwan government says average worker salaries in the month of January hit an 11-year high. However, as Eric Gao reports, only a few may be benefiting.
Taiwan's average salaries in January stood at 44,369 NT, or roughly 1,560 US dollars. That is the highest in 11 years, according to figures released by the Directorate General of Budget, Accounting and Statistics. Compared to the year before, it's an increase of 2.91%. However, consumer prices rose by a similar amount, 2.84%, offsetting much of the gains in income. In particular, the cost of dining out climbed sharply, going up 3.87% year on year, making meals for many workers more expensive. And the pay bump isn't being felt across the board. Many people earn less than the average, especially those in junior positions. And while well-known companies like Shinko Mitsukoshi department stores say they follow the industry standard, their pay is also below the government's reported average.
我们起薪是30K， 然后至39K，含奖金的部分最高可以达年薪大概50万左右。我们在业界来说，基本上是在均值的。
The figures are giving some job seekers second thoughts.
我不是社会新鲜人，所以呢，低于4万块，我觉得可能我会再考虑再试试别的机会。
Analysts say the government's figures are skewed because certain sectors are performing very well.
台积电的平均薪资是180万呢，那他那个就把那个低薪的2万4、2万5的就是就拉高很多，平均数啊绝对会骗人了。
The government has warned that consumer prices could continue to rise in the coming months due to the global economic impact of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which would erode any salary gains even further. Chris Ma and Eric Gao for TaiwanPlus.
Chile saw its first same-sex weddings on Thursday as the South American country became the latest to legalize same-sex marriage. Chile has recognized civil unions for same-sex couples since 2015, but they don't carry the same legal rights as marriage. Now, both members of a married couple will be recognized as parents to their children, and it will also be easier for them to adopt. The legalization follows a long fight by Chile's LGBT community that saw the bill sit in Congress for 4 years. It passed in December last year and took effect Thursday, the last day of President Sebastián Piñera's term in office. Scientists have found and filmed the wreck of the explorer Sir Ernest Shackleton's ill-fated expedition across the Antarctic, a boat called Endurance. Reinhold Kilpatrick has more on this historic discovery.
Frozen in time. After over a century hidden in the icy abyss, Antarctic explorer Sir Ernest Shackleton's ship, the Endurance, has been found at the bottom of the Weddell Sea. Shackleton and his men set sail aboard the barkentine in 1915 on a bold mission to make the first ever land crossing of Antarctica. But the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition, as it was known, failed before they could even step foot on the frozen continent. In February 1915, the ship became trapped in pack ice, not far from the Antarctic mainland. For months, it drifted northward, carried by ocean currents. In November, it was finally crushed and slipped beneath the ice. In spring, the crew made their way aboard 3 lifeboats to remote Elephant Island, weaving through a labyrinth of ice floes. From there, Shackleton and 5 companions sailed 1,300 kilometers to South Georgia, while the others made camp and waited. The voyage took them across the storm-tossed Drake Passage, braving heavy seas, freezing temperatures, and gale-force winds in a small, open lifeboat. When they finally landed, they had to cross the mountainous, unexplored interior to reach a whaling station on the other shore. From there, Shackleton personally mounted a rescue effort that brought all of his men home safely. Despite its failure, the expedition would be remembered forever as one of history's greatest survival stories and examples of leadership under unimaginable stress. The project to find the lost vessel was mounted by the Falklands Maritime Heritage Trust, using a South African icebreaker equipped with remotely operated submersibles. The wreck, found just over 4 nautical miles from its last recorded position, is remarkably well preserved. Sitting 3 kilometers below the surface, the depth, darkness, and frigid cold have shielded its timbers from degradation by marine organisms. And there it will remain, preserved in situ as a monument to the heroic age of Antarctic exploration and the indomitable human spirit. Ryan Ho Kilpatrick for TaiwanPlus.
Booking.com and Expedia have chosen a Taiwanese city as one of the hottest travel destinations in the world for 2022. In our brand new series, Where's the Mayor Taking Us? Andrew Ryan heads to Taichung to get the inside scoop from Mayor Liu Xiuye.
Taichung is big. The roads are big, the parks are big, the buildings are big, and even the public art is big. My journey begins at one of the most cavernous urban spaces in all of Taichung, a place right at the heart of the city. I'm here at the City Hall, and I've come to talk with Mayor Lu Xiuyan to find out about how the city is making a name for itself around the world. So where's the mayor taking us today? She says we're going straight to the top. Now, I'm not sure what that means, but come with me and we'll find out. I travel up to the top of City Hall. The mayor meets me on the 9th floor in a secluded rooftop garden.
当初的这个新的市政大楼，它是一个瑞士的这个建筑师所设计的哈，所以它具有非常宏伟的国际景观。那它也考虑到这个办公室它里面的舒适的一个场域哈。那所以我们现在就在9楼的中庭。
A lot of people are familiar with Taichung's modern features, the striking National Taichung Theater, which has no right angles anywhere inside the building, the multi-million-dollar apartment buildings inhabited by the city's ultra-rich, and the shiny modern train station. But in recent years, Taichung has been touching up older parts of the city too, and that began with opening up a key traffic artery to connect the old and new parts of the city.
旧的一些建设，我们把它做翻新、做整修、做保存。这旧的市政府，我们叫州厅，大概花6亿左右的经费，跟中央1人1半去把它整修。
Another newly renovated building is the 100-year-old Empire Sugar Factory, which was built during the Japanese colonial period. The city is also home to some of the oldest bookstores in the nation, century-old shops that have gotten a new lease on life.
第4市场哈，那个第4市场也是100年以上的市场哈，可是它具有100年的一个风貌，所以我们最近把它整修完成，那引入新的商家哈，那现在成为文青年轻人最喜欢去的打卡景点，又可以做一些现代食物的一个采买。
Mayor Lu tells me that there are more than 10,000 restaurants in the city, and 2 years ago, Taichung even got its own Michelin guide, and today it features nearly 70 restaurants.
台中是美食之都，它就是一个 Patriot City。台中因为早年藏富于民，那人民的生活安康富庶，所以呢有钱有闲。那有钱有闲的人呢，他在3餐这个吃完以后，他会吃点点心啊。那也因此呢，发展很多的糕饼文化。
And that, she says, is how Taichung became known for sweet treats like sun cakes, taro cakes, and even Western pastries like these decadent creations.
那另外，我们台中的甜品还包括像珍珠奶茶。
I know this. This is boba tea.
Boba tea,
yes.
全世界这个发源地就是在台中。
Food is just one of the reasons people are moving to the city in droves. It's one of the only places in Taiwan where the population is actually increasing.
在不同的媒体、不同的民调，他所做宜居幸福或是退休后最想居住城市都是台中。
I've noticed that actually Taichung, I never thought it would be the second largest city in Taiwan, but it's actually surpassed Kaohsiung and Taipei to become the second largest city. Why is that?
大家觉得住在这个地方非常的舒服，我愿意住在这个城市，所以大家愿意在这个地方生养孩子。 或者愿意移入，所以它能够人口增加，它能够串起的原因在这个地方。
But what's so great about Taichung? A lot of people think of it as just a pit stop between Taipei and Kaohsiung. Well, the mayor has come prepared to prove them wrong.
我们山可以高到3000多公尺，下雪。我们有很漂亮、很长的海岸线，我们那个高美湿地被日本一个旅游网站全日本人最想去第1名的地方。 所以换句话，你可能要定出主题来，那我们才能告诉你你要怎么走法。
那市长呢？如果是自己要去玩的话，你选一个主题，你会选什么？
那我不能讲啊，我当市长手心手背都是肉，我讲的话可能被追杀。对呀。
Now, obviously, Mayor Lu is going to be the #1 cheerleader for her own city. She is the mayor, after all. But some of the world's biggest travel websites are also waking up to the charms of Taichung.
Booking.com 它是全世界最大的旅馆线上订房系统，那他们就票选全世界新兴的8个这个最好的城市，大家最热搜的城市，台中是其中之一。全世界各国的民众会去 Expedia 去热搜旅游景点哈，我们是全球热搜第5名。
With borders shut these last 2 years, Taichung has only been playing host to local tourists. But the mayor has some treats in store for when international tourists finally return.
去年疫情最严重的时候，我们落成启用了我们的中央公园。去年4月25号，在中部地区第一条捷运，疫情期间我们把它开通。一旦疫情平稳，我们可以开大门，欢迎大家来。
Before I leave Taichung, I stopped by one of the city's most Instagrammable hotspots, the historic Rainbow Village. It was once home to military families who came from China following the Chinese Civil War. Today, it's covered in the artwork of an elderly resident whose paintings were a bid to keep the village from being torn down. In the past, Taichung was seen as a place you pass through on your way to somewhere else. But in recent years, it's truly discovered its own unique personality, its own color, as you can see here at Rainbow Village. And Taichung is also a city in flux. In fact, they're building buildings right next door. And it's these changes, these constant discoveries of new surprises that make Taichung not just a transit stop, but a destination all of its own.
Thanks for watching Taiwan Plus News. I'm Betty Chen. We'll leave you with footage of hundreds of people in Hungary forming a peace sign in solidarity with Ukraine. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the Taiwan Plus app. Stay safe and see you next time.